The hot-button issues of privacy and national security are front and center in Congress today because House lawmakers are expected to vote on a measure that would cut the government's authority to spy on millions of Americans. The amendment's attached to the defense spending bill, so it's getting a lot of attention. It would keep the NSA from collecting what we've all come to know as metadata, the records of phone calls that are made from overseas into this country, and they want to cut off the funding for it. Some of them do. So let's talk about this, whether or not it's a wise idea. Jack Keane is a retired four-star general and former vice chief of staff of the Army and a Fox News military analyst. He's also now the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. We add that to the list this morning. Jack, good morning. Good to have you with us today.
Good morning, Martha, and welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. And, you know, I was looking at what you had to say about this, and you were sort of there at the initial discussions and inception of this idea in terms of why we would need it. Tell everybody about that.
Well, right after 9/11, I was in the Pentagon that day, and I lost 85 teammates and sadly had to attend 40-plus funerals. But the week after, I traveled over to Major General Keith Alexander, who is the chief of the Army's Intelligence Command, to understand what had happened to us. And he showed me the spike in phone calls from terrorists in Afghanistan to the United States that occurred in July and August. And I asked him, I said, well, who were they talking to? And he said, well, sir, we were not able to determine who those numbers are, nor can we monitor those conversations. We have no authorities. And I was astounded by that. I didn't know that myself. And weeks later, President Bush provided those authorities to the National Security Agency to be able to do just that. And then it was codified in law months later in the Patriot Act, which this is now a part of and is being discussed. Yeah. So it begs the question, I don't think we would ever know for certain if we had these authorities prior to 9/11 would have prevented that horrific disaster of 3,000 Americans killed. But I think we could say it is probably likely because it has prevented so many attacks since 9/11.
Well, that's what, you know, that is definitely what they say. We know there's one attack, and I know I keep hammering on this, but what happened in Boston, when you look at the way this program is laid out, it should have allowed them to be on to the Tsarnaev brothers, and it didn't. So, you know, I know a lot of people are very concerned about the privacy issues here, but my biggest concern is, does the program that we have work? Is it too overbroad, and are we just gathering all this data and we're not able to focus in on two people who had every reason to be on that list and be watched?
Well, I know that is an issue, and hopefully we're going to get to the bottom of what were the failures associated with that. But this much I do know, you know, about this program, and it is appropriate to discuss the balance between security and privacy in an open democracy like ours. But, Martha, the enemy that we are dealing with is worldwide network broken up into cells that are decentralized. The sole means of communication for them in that worldwide network is using a phone and also using the internet. They're in the shadows, and they're using that as secrecy to conduct and coordinate these operations. Electronic surveillance is the primary means for us to gather actionable intelligence, and the value of that is greater than a combination of all other means that we use to gather intelligence. There's nothing that compares to it. So the degree of success that we have had is largely dependent on these electronic surveillance programs. And we have to put that reality on the table as we try to balance privacy and security needs.
Yeah, I mean, I know you are a big proponent of the program, and I understand the reasons behind it, but I think that, you know, there needs to be some attention to the fact that it may be overbroad, and they may be not able to catch some people as a result. Politically, you know, you've got libertarians on board with cutting the funding. You've also got some Democrats. So it's an interesting bedfellows that we find here. Do you think it can pass politically?
Well, I don't like the process. This is an amendment to a defense bill.
Right.
This should be discussed in the context of the entire Patriot Act, and let's have a discussion that with hearings, not as a rush to judgment on an amendment. And let's bring the hearings in, the experts, the critics of the program, and let the American people be exposed to this discussion with true subject matter experts, and then we can make some judgments.
It's an important discussion. You're so right. General Jack Keane, thank you. Always